Today's Christmas reading comes from A Smoky Mountain Boyhood, Memories, Musings, and More, written by Jim Cassada, and I'll put the link in the description below if you're interested in picking up your own copy. Old Time Natural Christmas. In today's world, obtaining the family Christmas tree involves nothing more than a stop at a store, viewing trees stacked side by side in a vacant lot, or retrieving an artificial tree from the attic. Real adventure in obtaining the family tree involves going to a Christmas tree farm and wandering amongst growing trees until one is spotted that strikes the fancy. Mind you, the Christmas tree industry has been a real economic boon for some mountain folks, but it marks a dramatic change from what was once common practice. During my boyhood, virtually everyone cut their own tree, and often it involved an outing in which the entire family participated. Our family search for the ideal tree, always a pine, began at Thanksgiving with the opening of the rabbit hunting season. My father and I would give every tree of the right size and promising shape a visual once over, and those with considerable potential would be filed away in our minds as possibles come tree cutting time. When the big day arrived, a Sunday afternoon about 10 days to 2 weeks before Christmas, the whole family would pile in the car and head out to cut a tree. For us kids, there was a sense of great excitement, and Mama, who enjoyed anything and everything connected with Christmas with all the eagerness, anticipation, and joy of an 8-year-old, fell right into the spirit of things. Yet tree cutting was but one part of a wide-ranging Christmas decorating process, virtually all of which involved using materials from nature. Taking this approach offered 3 distinct advantages. Decorations from nature were lovely, cost nothing, and procuring and preparing them produced wonderful moments of family togetherness. I look back on those bygone Yuletides with a great deal of longing. Perhaps indulgence in some natural Christmas nostalgia will evoke similar fond memories for others or inspire a contemporary approach to the season. With that in mind, here's a whole host of suggestions for holiday decorating joy straight out of Smokey's days of yesteryear. Mistletoe was a must, and it loomed large in Mama's overall decorating scheme. That in turn proved a boon for me because I love the entire process involved in obtaining quantities of it sufficient to satisfy her needs. In some places, mistletoe grows low and can be gathered with ease. Take a winter canoe trip down a low-country river in either of the Carolinas and you'll see big bunches of the leathery green parasite loaded with waxy white berries adorning one tree after another. It will be at a height where you can ease a canoe under it and pick enough for a major outbreak of kissing fever in no time at all. In the high country of the Great Smokies, on the other hand, mistletoe seems to be comparatively scarce, and invariably when you find an oak, maple, or maybe a honey locust bedecked with a few clumps, they will be way up in the top of the tree. However, far from being a cause for dismay during my boyhood, that remoteness, scarcity, and inaccessibility presented precisely the sort of challenge a teenager welcomed. Basically, there were 3 ways to procure mistletoe. Occasionally it was possible, provided one had sufficient agility and a virtual absence of fear or common sense, to climb a tree to obtain mistletoe. Such challenges, especially the delicious hint of climbing danger, something which always appeals to a teenage boy, made that approach to obtaining mistletoe more interesting. A second method, more commonly employed for the simple reason that finding a climbable mistletoe-bearing tree occurred infrequently, was to throw rocks or sticks at the clumps of greenery. Sticks with some heft and size to them were preferred for the simple reason they were far more likely to produce satisfactory results than merely chunking donics. They required too much accuracy, whereas a stick of some size cut a fairly big swath as it flew through the air. My favorite tactic, however, involved shooting the mistletoe out. A tightly choked shotgun would sometimes do the trick, although if the mistletoe was very high in a tree, even the most closely patterned shot strings would spread out enough to result in tatters of mistletoe rather than sizable clumps. Moreover, should you be lucky enough to shoot out a fairly nice-sized piece, chances were it would have pellet holes all through the leaves. On the other hand, a .22 rifle in the right hands was perfect. It required expert marksmanship to cut away a bunch of mistletoe right where it joined a tree limb, but that challenge was no small part of the fun. The sport became even more delightful if 3 or 4 boys were involved, each trying to outdo the other in demonstrating their shooting prowess. My decidedly modest armory, which consisted of a single-barrel Savage Model 220A shotgun, a well-worn Daisy Red Ryder BB gun, and a slingshot, didn't run to the luxury of a .22 rimfire. However, a good buddy did own one, and he was quite happy for all of us to take turns shooting it so long as each of us sprung for our own ammunition. Since .22 long rifle loads cost only a penny each in those days, less if you bought a box of 100 or if several boys pooled resources to purchase a brick of 500, even mountain boys who were anything but flush could afford enough cartridges to have real fun. Our normal mistletoe gathering days came on a Sunday afternoon a week or 2 before Christmas. You couldn't hunt on Sunday, and by that point in December, one or more of our mothers would have mentioned needing some of this prime Yuletide decorating material. That was all the excuse we needed to head for the woods. Those of us, James Lee Sosaman, Frank Fry, Jackie Corbin, Bill Rowland, Bruce Paris, and others, who regularly formed the youthful portion of the rabbit hunting brigade led by my father and Claude Gossett, had already been keeping a keen eye out for mistletoe in much the same fashion as Daddy always sought an ideal Virginia pine for our family tree. Accordingly, we always knew where plenty of mistletoe was available. When several of us got together, relying not only on James Lee's .22, but likely using his Jeep for transportation, it made for an afternoon of great fun. We would take shot about, tease one another about misses, brag about hits, and indulge in all sorts of verbal foolishness connected with thoughts of getting whatever girl happened to be the apple of our respective eyes at the time under the mistletoe. I remember precious little in the way of positive developments in the latter context, but I do fondly recall Mama's pleasure and her special knack for making me feel good when I came home bearing mistletoe. She would make over the fresh greenery as if it were almost equivalent to gifts of the Magi, decorate it with red ribbon, and hang it at 2 or 3 likely places in the house. For a mountain boy of the 1950s, it was an innocent, intriguing, and flat-out joyful experience. Along with a plenitude of mistletoe, Mom always wanted a few 2 or 3 foot long clippings from a honey locust tree. She disarmed the plentiful thorns by tipping each of them with a colorful gumdrop, thereby making an unusual, attractive decoration. If a few of the gumdrops mysteriously vanished thanks to the depredations of youngsters with a sweet tooth, Mom quietly replaced them, and in keeping with the spirit of the season, never uttered a word about missing candy. Wreaths and table centerpieces made from natural materials such as hazelnuts still in the husk, cones from hemlocks, white pines, and other types of evergreens, sweet gum balls, sycamore balls, milkweed pods, old wasp nests, small bird nests, and the like were standard decorative features of Christmas. So were wreaths made from grapevines and then interlaced with evergreens or sprigs of holly. The sycamore and sweet gum balls could also be dipped in a flour and water mixture and then dried to give them the appearance of miniature snowballs. They could also be painted silver or gold. These carefully crafted items gave Mama a great deal of pleasure, always drew favorable comments from visitors, and added appreciably to the overall festiveness of our house at holiday time. Another approach to similar decorations focused exclusively on nuts: hazelnuts, black walnuts, hickory nuts, acorns, butternuts, and chinky pins. For visual variation, Mom always included some hickory nuts and acorns still in partially opened hulls. Galax leaves were popular for wreaths, table decorations, wall hangings, and mantel adornment. During winter months, gaylax leaves turn wonderful hues of red, purple, maroon, and magenta along with their basic green. Leaves also have a noticeable sheen and keep well for a couple of weeks. Gaylax is so attractive that at one time, hardy mountain folks, always looking for a way to earn a bit of cash money, would gather it for wreaths or to form in great clusters to sell to city folks. Just as those who gathered ginseng were locally known as sangers, those who pursued this seasonal work were styled gaylackers. Holly is one of the handful of trees, with persimmons being another one, that come in male and female forms. With its bright red berries, she holly was always an important part of decorating for Christmas. It was fashioned into door hangings, used as edging around doors and windows, spread atop mantels, featured in decoration with candles, and more. Looking for a berry-laden tree was a standard sidelight to the search for a perfect Christmas tree in our family outing. Cedar was another widely used evergreen, and cutting cedar branches, ideally adorned with plenty of the tree's small blue berries to use with holly, pyracantha, nandina, bittersweet, or other berry-laden plants was another means of turning to nature at Christmas. Daddy would have no part of a cedar tree for use as our family tree. Although cedars often have ideal shapes, he maintained that dealing with them, given the way they stuck and pricked the skin, just wasn't worth the trouble. On the other hand, he readily acknowledged that using cedar for other decorative purposes brought a pleasing aroma to the house. Running cedar, also known as ground cedar and by other names, likewise found its decorative place. This ground cover, found widely throughout the mountains, was easily gathered. It almost always occurred in large patches. Sometimes they covered a half acre or more. Making garlands of popcorn for the family tree using popcorn we had grown, shucked, shelled, and popped was a favorite seasonal ritual. It provided double fun because some of the popper kernels would be salted and buttered. Thus you could snack while stringing popped kernels using a needle and strong sewing thread. Usually a large quantity of corn would be popped, and some would be blended with molasses to make popcorn balls. This was a marvelous, messy process, and never did finger licking seem more enjoyable. Sometimes inedible parts of game animals were fashioned into centerpieces for the festive holiday table. For example, deer sheds blended with greenery worked quite nicely in this regard, and a pair of wild turkey fans placed end to end made a nice oval atop which you could place she holly or other berry-bearing greenery. Wall hangings featuring small deer sheds, turkey feathers, white-tailed tails, grouse feathers, honey locust pods, and the like were also possible. The foregoing offers but a sampling of items we used, not the deer and turkey related items, since both were extremely scarce in the Smokies of the mid-20th century, something which is today no longer the case, for holiday decoration. To the list could be added the limbs from the white pines and hemlock, which always figured prominently in the season, although thinking of the fate of the hemlock brings sadness to a season of gladness. One has to wonder if it is fated to go the way of the lordly American chestnut, which in its own right was an integral part of Christmas a century ago. In yesteryear, as these approaches to decorating suggest, mountain folks turned straight to nature's rich bounty for much of their Christmas preparation. The end result was simple beauty and a seasonal connection with the outdoors and the good earth. That link was an integral part of mountain life throughout the year, and it was only logical and appropriate that it be incorporated into the celebration of Christmas.